Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining us today, this morning. We will tell you about interpreting social media by enhancing your brand and communications. It's quite a bit of a different perspective, so we want to share this with you.
Next slide, yeah.
First of all, I'd like to introduce you Turkcell, our firm. Turkcell is a leading GSM operator in Turkey. It's quite a big firm. We have around 36 million subscribers in Turkey, but we're operating in 4 different countries and around 50 million subscribers. Turkcell is the only firm that's listed in the New York Stock Exchange, so we are a little bit of a global firm rather than a local firm. With the strong top-line financials, we have around $3.2 billion revenue for a year.
Good morning. I'm Ayşe. I'm CEO of eBrandValue. eBrandValue is a software as a service. In very simplistic terms, we take all social network data, we analyze its sentiment, and we track brand affinities of individuals on social. And we can determine whether consumers will actually buy a brand or not. eBrandValue's algorithm is a consumer behavior model that's been proven in marketing science, and we use it on social. We've had the pleasure to work with Turkcell over the past 3 years. We've been working with multiple levels of organization within Turkcell, ranging from market research, consumer insights, to brand strategy, retail marketing, corporate identity, sponsor and influencer relationships, to name a few. The metrics of our software within Turkcell have been used by different groups to measure and to create and to find critical insights on things like brand awareness, salience, price value, product quality perception, loyalty, and marketing communications. More than half of the world's population, as you well know, is on social. And in the years to come, as humans are social creatures, social will continue to play a great role in forming small and large communities, establishment and loss of reputation, dissemination of knowledge, and building of great brands.
And from the brand's perspective, social media is a must right now, and it's very much crucial because the consumers are speaking about their preferences. They engage with their brands. Also, the buying decision, most of the buying decision takes place in the social. Therefore, with the right strategy, brands can increase their awareness, reach a broader range of consumers, and engage with their customers directly. So, thinking all these at mind, what is the right strategy? Is the strategy for my marketing in the social media works well? That's the question.
So in the current social media landscape, in the land of social media monitoring, unfortunately, brand health tracking has been reduced to frequency tracking. While frequency changes on social may tell you a few things, it's barely scratching the surface of the things that can be done when interpreting social. So we think some of the questions that you could be asking yourself are the same consumers or authors engaging with my brand from day to day? Am I reaching new authors, or am I reaching new audiences? If certain authors are changing their brand loyalty to my brand, are they switching from the competition, from other competing firms? And why would they be switching their brand loyalty? What are the prevailing trends that is causing this switching activity? And most importantly, what are the most successful marketing strategies or influencer sponsorship strategies that my competition could be utilizing that I can harness insights from? And most importantly, how can I invest my limited resources to get the highest return on my marketing efforts, to create the longest, to ensure long-term brand loyalty and create brand value and definitely maximize sales?
When we started to work with social media and e-brand value, we definitely see that making sense of the data is crucial, but not that easy. So exclusion of the irrelevant data and inclusion of the right data is very much important in generating the right insights for you. For example, location sponsorships, news, and referential posts about economics or political things that bias the results that you're getting. For example, in Turkey, we have sponsorships by GSM operators for the football stadiums. The names of the football stadiums are with the names of the brands. So in Turkey, there are very much sharings about the football. So when we look at the metrics, we see our brand is repeated many times, but with irrelevant data, the match scores and anything. So again, to take the relevant data out of all these posts is very important.
So brand affinity. Our approach, eBrand Values approach, is basically to track brand affinity of all the individuals in a given sector, in this case, the mobile sector in Turkey. So for each individual that has interacted with your brand or your competitor, your product, or even the generic level product category, we track historical brand affinity of that individual, and we can measure when, and most importantly, why certain audience migrations are happening between brands on social.
All those volumes and metrics, okay, they're good KPIs, we can track things down, but they barely convey insight about the context that's going on in the social media. We, as a marketing team, we were asking what's the journey of our campaigns in the social media, what they're conveying about our brand. So we have a few questions in mind, and we'll tell our questions to our partners, and let me go through those. How can I interpret social media's impact on my brand perception? Which type of communications contribute to my brand more? Which aspects of marketing campaigns impact my brand perception? How do I compare to my competitors in terms of brand perception?
So one way, one method whereby we can answer these questions is what we call a meme-based ethnographic segmentation. So the process is built on defining and collecting memes that we see or that emerge from social, from organically shared content, expressions, and experiences within a given particular sector. In the case of Turkcell and the mobile sector, what we did was we used eBrand Values' extensive and historical user-generated content database from social for that particular sector, for the mobile sector. We took a random sample of usable and unique contents. We analyzed these contents through topic modeling and other sources to discover and categorize meaningful expressions into what we call brand dimensions. Now, we combined the keywords under each dimension into memes. Memes are themes or recurring patterns that are seen on social, but they are also quite dynamic, as social is very dynamic. So they're constantly evolving patterns that you see on social. After taking all these memes, and we organized larger pools of data, and we took the memes that we collected under each dimension, and we applied all of the software metrics to sort of these dimensions to see what kind of a framework emerged. And there was a framework that emerged for the entire mobile sector in Turkey. Now, with this framework, what we hoped Turkcell can do is to see the efficacy of their marketing campaigns within this framework and marketing communication strategies and their efforts vis-a-vis the competition, and to see where their weaknesses and strengths lie so they can invest their resources accordingly. So interestingly enough, 5 specific dimensions emerged from all the social media content in the mobile sector for Turkey. These dimensions are, the first one is socially conscious. So socially conscious is a dimension about current and communal agenda that the brand is using or utilizing, whereby the brand is perceived to be a brand with empathy by consumers as a whole on social. Product is self-explanatory. These are usually expressions or communications on social related to the mobile operators' services and products, ranging from ease of use to pricing to user-friendliness to packages, etc. Technologically innovative or technology-driven is also relatively self-explanatory, whereby it's about the use of technology by the brand and how technologically forward the brand is perceived to be by the general public or the consumers. Brand love is the deeply personal, emotional, expressive, appreciative expressions, content that are seen on social towards the brand where consumers are showing their loyalty. And pioneering finally is once again, it's about communal issues and how a brand is able to harness communal issues both outside the sector and inside the sector, and how they're able to transfer and convert them into projects and ventures that are available to the public and as a whole.
Okay. How do we use those dimensions when we are evaluating our marketing efforts? Through those dimensions, we can break down our marketing effort into the dimensions and what they are perceived and they're serving for. Also, we can apply those for the competitors, so we can have a comparative analysis of what we are harnessing and what we are abandoning, what my competitor is taking position of. So, here, for example, we see that the socially conscious dimension is the most popular dimension for the moment. And Turkcell, as the market leader, is harnessing this dimension, right? It is expected to be. In the product, we are also doing fine. But please look at the technologically driven dimension. That's the bubble is bigger than the competitors. So we can see that this is our competitive advantage against our competitors with this technology-driven dimension. This means that we are doing campaigns that's perceived and communicated about technologically innovative side of them, and that's gaining us more engagement and more writers. Also, we can break down these dimensions into campaigns. We can map the campaigns to the 5 dimensions. Here, let me walk you through this chart. How do we get insights from this? A few examples. For example, when we look at the chart, we see that we are in all 5 dimensions. We are existing in all these 5 dimensions. So this means like a health check for us that our portfolio of campaigns are balanced and we are in all the dimensions. Also, as I mentioned before, the most popular dimension is the socially conscious, and we are penetrating it with 5 different campaigns. But with these 5 different campaigns, we see that at the top, the National Victory Celebration campaign, which is the most impactful of all. So we can have a comparison about the campaigns, which one is more impactful, which one is less. So this also shows a performance within the dimension. Also, we discovered something, and it turned out to be a learning for us. When you look at this Kids Digital Awareness application, this is in the technologically driven dimension. But basically, it is not something technological. okay, this campaign was social responsibility campaign. But because this program is enabled by a digital application, it is perceived much more with its technological side. So this is a learning for us because we wanted to give a message of social responsibility, but it is much more perceived with its technology side. So it's a learning, and we can see how they impacted the social media posts. So for the next time, if you want to give a stronger message about the social responsibility, we will adjust our message with less technology. So at the end, what we learned that here, that in telecommunications sector, we see that socially conscious is the most popular dimension. So we have to harness this dimension. Our campaigns should be serving this dimension, not to abandon this one. And also we see that technology-driven is, as a brand, our competitive advantage. We should be making campaigns to harness this dimension also. So what's next? This is just a start. As you can see, we're happy with our start, and we can now see the journey of our campaigns in the social media. But our aim is to move to a more targeted strategy, to use those dimensions about the campaigns. We want to target social media channels that are serving specific dimensions. So for the future, we are going to work more on it and to get these dimensions in our lives to make a better strategy for the social media in terms of marketing campaigns.
And as a final note, social media is not about broad strokes. It's not about frequency tracking. We believe it's all about knowing which movements, behaviors, patterns, themes are driving certain audience migrations within a given sector. Now, in the case of the mobile sector in Turkey and Turkcell, we were able to build and structure a framework with Turkcell, alongside Turkcell, that is one way, which is meme-based ethnographic segmentation, to interpret social.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Robert from Hungary, from React Digital. So thank you for the great presentation. It was very interesting to see how you deploy and use this methodology. As we heard yesterday, there is a silent majority in social media. So approximately, yesterday you mentioned 10% of the population use actively the sites and comment and say something in social media. So what do you think about the silent majority? How can you involve in the silent majority in this approach?
You're just asking about, like, the demographically, it's the percentage of the population?
No, I mean that it is a very comprehensive approach, and you measure different dimensions based on the comments and activity of the users in social media. But the majority doesn't active, so they just listen and they are there. And what is the impact on the communication of the others? How can you involve them? So how do you know that what is thinking that silent majority about your brand?
Well, I mean, it is, on social, it's all about organically shared content, right? And obviously the number of people who are commenting, liking, or expressing their views or sharing their experiences change from sector to sector. Banking is a different animal. Consumer packaged goods, cosmetics, beauty, for example, or retail is entirely different. So we believe that social is still very much a great representation of sort of the general public as a whole, regardless of the sector. There is just a lot of organic conversation between all the networks, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, blogs, YouTube, forums. and even some other platforms that are emerging like TikTok or what have you. So there's ample ways for consumers to express their views. Now, as opposed to a traditional method of questionnaires, surveys, or focus groups, where a person like yourself is asked a question and is asked to basically answer a specific question, which could very well be a little biased, where social is so much more organic than that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, somewhat yet.
Zeynep, did you want to add anything? Okay.
No, that's fine.
A couple more questions.
Hi, I'm Christian Vesser from Danone. Thanks for sharing first. I wanted to know whether you try, and to build on just what you said, to try to kind of combine this kind of outputs with traditional tracker on your brands, and if yes, how you do that?
Yeah, so I'll let Zeynep answer the question from the mobile sector perspective, but we take all public social data. I just want to clarify that first. So given the social data and the movements and sort of the activities that are happening on social and the brand affinity changes, we have seen over the years for CPGs to be a strong correlation between the metrics of our software and actual sales numbers, and in the case of service industry, Net Promoter Score numbers. But more importantly, we believe social is a leading indicator of actual sales and has a huge predictive ability, and we've been able to do that for a number of years. Now, in terms of sort of the correlation or sort of the relationship between traditional methods of brand health studies, I think is what you're asking. I'll let a client answer that question. We've seen cases, especially with consumer packaged goods clients of ours, whereby they do studies once a year or sometimes once in 2 years discretely at a given point in time, and global health, brand health checks, if you will, by big sort of market research companies. And they find that to be, because it is a discrete point in time and it's not as dynamic as social. For example, this segmentation study, you can actually pretty much on our software check from week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, so it's not done discretely. Our clients have found these types of studies to be more dynamic in nature and slowly stopping sort of the traditional brand health studies. Now, in terms of the exact relationship with what we see and what they see, there will be differences because there is a demographic bias here on social, right? I mean, for your product, it may not be so much the case, but there are specific product groups where certain demographics are probably not represented on social, but still is a pretty good sample of audiences, and especially when you're comparing apples to apples, i.e. yourself to a competitor, you're still basing it off of the same sample audience. I don't know if that answers, but please, do you see any connection between
the conventional and the social media? Actually, we don't see much. They're like complementary to each other because, for example, in Turkey, it is the people using the social media are not resembling the rest of the population. So when we want to do a brand perception test in a conventional way, that's going to be representative of the whole population. But the social media is a different, like a segment. So we want to be tracking this segment and see what's going on dynamically, because it's going to have some outcomes in the future for the general public. So we don't see them very much similar, but they converge and diverge time to time. So we are not leaving the conventional things. We do research about brand, but we are also tracking this in the social media not to miss any points. It's okay?
Okay, and we have a final question from Rebecca.
There was another one. Oh.
Thank you for the great presentation. I understood that the size of the bubble represented sort of, you said it was the most popular, but I think that was the level of engagement or the numbers of writers that were commenting on that topic behind it. I was curious to know how you link those topics that are being most talked about to brand preference or purchase intent, because do you see that there's a direct link, or I'm thinking that sometimes topics that are talked about a lot might not actually be the ones that then drive purchase intent, and I was curious to know what your next steps are around this.
The dimensions may not be directly linked to purchase intent, but the authors that create content, every single individual that created content or continues to create content in that specific dimension in this sector, within our software, has a brand preference allocated to that. There's a brand score and a brand preference. So over time, that person's sort of evolution or loyalty changes will actually be an indicator of potential purchase intent if they're defecting or if they're relinquishing their loyalty from their brand and switching to another brand. That is also, and imagine not just one individual, clusters and clusters of individuals, right? Audiences that are showing the same type of trend within a specific dimension could be very telling about what's going on with the purchase intent.
Great, thank you, that's very clear.
Also, I may add, in the chart we see 5 dimensions. One of them was the product. Socially conscious, pioneering, etc. These may not have a direct link with the purchase intent, but the product dimension should also always be penetrated. Also, we are looking further analysis. For example, we are looking at the positive sentiment, negative sentiment about all those dimensions. When you look at the product, we look at every campaign's positive and negative sentiments. So we can see our communications about the campaigns, the product campaigns are spoken in a good manner, or they're liked or they're not liked. So 2 things is important. We have to be in the product dimension all the time. We should not abandon this. Also, we should be there with a positive sentiment.
Great, thank you.
That's great. Zeynep and Aisha, thanks so much for a great start.